Hi, I'm Larry Black, and welcome to Larry's Country Diner. Tonight is a special night. 1 hour filled with Jimmy Capps. That's right, our sheriff. He is a guitar player extraordinaire. If you watch the diner, you'll know how special he is. And if you've had an opportunity to read the book, The Man in Back, that's Jimmy Capps. Tonight we pay honor and tribute to Jimmy Capps. And it's all brought to you on Larry's Country Diner by Gus Arundale and Springer Mountain Farms Fresh Chicken.
I've known Jimmy Capps probably longer than just about anybody. I met him when he was 13 years old, and I was a fan of Jimmy's when he was just a young teenager. He was a child prodigy. He was a hero to all us young musicians. I was a couple of years older than he was, but he was already out there doing what I was dreaming of doing. We were just two little boys from North Carolina dreaming of playing music for a living and dreaming of the day of being on the Grand Ole Opry. Here we are, both about 80 years old, and all of our dreams come true and so many times over. But I know that neither one of us got here by ourselves. God gave us the talent, and God has allowed us to live out our dreams for so long. Jimmy's never changed. He's the same old Tar Heel Capps I met 73 years ago. He was a hero then, he's a hero now. He just don't chew as much gum as he used to.
You got time for a handshake?
People ask me why I call myself the Man in Back. It's very simple. That's where I've always been. I've always been a musician who backed up the person standing up at the middle mic. Most people in any kind of entertainment want to be the center of attention. They desire to always be out front so everyone can see them. Not me, I'm the man in back.
Jimmy Capps he's top notch. I mean, you can ask anybody and it don't get no better.
It's hard to sit back and let people say all these nice things about you, and you feel like, well, am I deserving of it? Well, I can tell you Jimmy Capps is deserving of it.
He's steady as a rock. If you want a loyal friend, you can turn to Jimmy.
He has been a part of so much of the history of country music.
He was as big a star to me as the people that sang the songs on the radio, because he was a huge part of defining and making a lot of those records memorable.
He's a very complex person.
Jimmy is the most unegotistical man I've ever met in my life.
He's probably the only person at the Grand Ole Opry has been here longer than I have.
I think he is as good can be.
And I've said it to him too. I say, you don't even realize you're Jimmy Capps. You don't even get it, do you?
When I knew Jimmy Capps was going to be there, then I just simply didn't worry about anything.
Well, he's such a key part of the music too. I mean, he played on everything, and so, I mean, he is country music.
I think there are many layers to Jimmy Capps.
On May 25th, 1939, James Dixon Capps was born, but you can call me Jimmy. As a boy, my real guitar hero was a guy named Hayden Ivey. He was really popular in my hometown because he was such a great guitar player, great musician.
I met him when he was 13 years old. But as far as the musicians are concerned, with the exception of the guy that taught me my first chord on a guitar, who is still alive and kicking, I don't know of a musician I've known longer than I've known Jimmy.
When Dad was 11, he got a job delivering groceries. His boss was a man named James Thornton.
I don't know where the name come from. I didn't come up with this. Now, they called him Little Jimmy the Chewing Gum Boy because he chewed gum.
When he wasn't chewing gum, Dad was playing that guitar. His mom and Dad bought him a Stella for $12. He played that guitar every day, and a year later he got a call from his boss at the grocery store, Mr. Thornton, who offered him a much more exciting job.
He played with Jim Thornton and Hayden Ivey in I think it was Irwin, either Dunn or Irwin, North Carolina, somewhere over there, at a radio show. And here's this kid, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old. In the early years when I knew him, he's playing on radio. All of a sudden he's playing on TV, playing professionally, making a living. I mean, you know, probably having to get notes wrote so he could get out of school and go play. I mean, of course he was a hero. I mean, you know, anybody, he still is, and he's 80 years old. He's still a hero to me.
And the year before I got started recording and touring, I used to guest on a little TV show in Durham, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And the guitar player was 15 years old, and it was the sheriff here.
Are
He
you
was on
kidding
the
me?
same show.
I was just a Boy Scout then.
That TV show was called Saturday Night Country Style. One night, Dad's guitar hero, Hayden Ivey, said he could use his guitar to play lead.
That would be like your hero was Babe Ruth, and he said, "You can use my bat."
In 1957, Dad started playing with the duo of Tommy Hagen and Buck Jones. Tommy and Buck sang all the Louvin Brothers songs of the day. Dad thought Ira and Charlie Louvin were the greatest duo he'd ever heard. A short time later, when the Louvin Brothers' lead guitar player was drafted, they called him to come audition for the group.
Paul Yandel, their then guitar player who had been drafted, he kind of shunned me a little bit and kind of looked away from me. But then he turned back around and he said, "Jimmy, why don't you play us an instrumental?" And I said, "Well, okay, Paul, what would you like to hear?" And he said, "How about Malaguena?" And I said, "Boy, I don't know Malaguena, Paul, I'm sorry." And Charlie Louvin said, "Paul, me and Irie hardly ever sing Malaguena anymore." So they hired me. In December of 1958, I walked out on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry with the Louvin Brothers. I was 19 when I made my Opry debut. I was also as sick as I could be. I knew that I had a very high fever. I didn't know it then, but it was double pneumonia. It got diagnosed on Sunday afterward. But I said, I'm gonna go play the Opry if it kills me, you know, so. I didn't die, of course, but if I had kicked the bucket the day after I'd played the Opry, I would have died a happy man.
When I was growing up, when I was a kid, the Louvin Brothers were my favorite on the Opry, and he was playing then.
December of '58 was truly life-changing for me. Not only did I make my Opry debut, but I also got married. Ann was from Raleigh, North Carolina. We met when she was 16, I was 15. We got married 4 years later. In 1962, I was living my dream. I'd been with the Louvin Brothers for 4 years. I was playing with my heroes.
He does that break, and he's sitting there so calm and everything, and he goes through it, and then he gets that in, and he has that little smirk on the end. He's like, like, you know, and I'm like, yeah, it's that face, you know. He's like, he knows it. He's like, I know, I just played the crap out of it. Nobody ever is gonna be able to do that again.
When we weren't out on tour, we were playing the Grand Ole Opry, and I was on top of the world. I never wanted it to end. And then it ended, or at least it came to a screeching halt. I received my draft notice from Uncle Sam. One of my duties as an MP was to direct traffic. One day as I was directing traffic, waving cars through, the sergeant pulled up beside the oil drum I was standing on, and he said, "Aren't you Jimmy Capps? Didn't you work the Opry with the Louvin Brothers? You need to be playing music, not directing traffic." He told me he had a friend in the Pentagon that could get me into a show called the 2nd Army Showmobile. And he did. Our second Army show had a space theme. We wore silver and blue costumes that were made of this stretchy and shiny latex kind of material. I think we looked like a combination between Buck Owens' Buckaroos and the Space Cadets. I enjoyed my 2 years in the Army. They were good years for me, but they had not been good ones for my heroes. While I was away, the Louvens had split up. They had broken up their act. A couple of weeks before I got out of the Army, I called Charlie Leuven, who was still on the Opry and had some hit records. I called him and asked him, could I get my job back? And I said, well, I'm at Fort Meade, Maryland, and I get out on the 18th of October. And he said, well, I'm working in Baltimore the 20th. Why don't I pick you up? After our show in Baltimore, we headed to New York, where we played a show with Minnie Pearl.
Brother Jason.
I had already worked 5 days on the road with Charlie before I ever came back home to Nashville. I was on the road with Charlie Leuven after the duet had split up, and we were in Virginia. And we were headed to play I call them hillbilly parks. It was an outdoor park. When we got to the gate, the guy said, Mr. Leuven, you have an emergency phone call. So Charlie went to the office, and he came back, and he was white as a sheet, you know, when he came back. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, Ira got killed last night. In the summer of 2010, Charlie was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The last thing he ever did was one of the country's family reunion shows. We didn't know how bad he really was. He ended up getting sick during the tape and had to leave. I was busy playing on the show and didn't get to say any last words to him. That is something I always regret. You should never pass up the chance to tell a friend that you love them, because you never know when it's going to be the last time. In the 60s and 70s, I was blessed to be a part of a lot of the country music TV shows.
I always loved the Wilburn show. He was on all those shows, all the country shows, a bunch of them.
I brought it up to him one night. I said, man, were you on a McCamey's live video one time? He said, yeah, how do you know that? And I said, man, I grew up watching that kind of stuff, so.
In 1967, I toured with Ferlin Husky. I was one of his hush puppies. That same year, my wife and I started trying to have a family. We had been married 9 years, but a baby never came along. So in earlier 1968, we adopted a newborn baby boy. And as luck would have it, just a couple of months after we adopted Jeff, my wife got pregnant. When our son, Mark Jason, was born, we found ourselves the parents of 2 little boys in less than a year.
In 1973, I recorded a song called "I Just Started Hating Cheating Songs Today," and I was just a young kid, and the sheriff there played on that record. He was an older guy, and the sessions. I mean, he did sessions every day, several a day.
They tell me that I played on for a couple of decades, 500 sessions per year. I hope that's true.
You know, people talking about giant hits, and he's just sitting there. If it was me, I'd go, I played on that, you know, I was on that record.
People talk about all the classic hits I played on, but when you play on that many sessions, you're bound to cut a hit every now and then.
His guitar licks in the intro of Busted, that's Jimmy in all his glory. Played on the record, this guy. the first thing you hear basically on the record.
My bills are all due, and the babies need shoes, but I'm busted.
I played on Freddie Hart's Easy Lovin', Billy Joe Spears' Blanket on the Ground, 16th Avenue for Lacey J. Dalton. I was also on George Jones's He Stopped Loving Her Today and Tammy Wynette's record of Stand By Your Man.
Well, the first time I remember meeting Jimmy, I was a kid. I was only about 11 years old, and me and Adam Barber came to Nashville to do my first recording session, and Jimmy Capps produced a record, and Taylor was only, I was about 8 years old.
I remember Jimmy came to me and asked me if I would sing some demos for him, and I about came unglued because it's like, I can't believe this. I can die and go to heaven now because I'm doing this, boy. I'm there, I've arrived, I'm working with Jimmy Capps, you know.
I was honored to play on 40 #1 songs that Ronnie Milsap had.
Whatever I needed on guitar, whether it was lead, acoustic, or whatever, all you got to do is just, mention Jimmy's name, and he was there.
One of the first times I met Jimmy Capps was on a recording session, and he was so nice to me, and he didn't have to be nice to me. I was kind of a newcomer with the Statler Brothers, and I think everything we ever did, Jimmy Capps was on. Our records, Statler Brothers shows, Jimmy Capps, one of the best in the business.
That's before he went into politics.
Ran for sure. He was everything I ever thought he would be, and even nicer actually than I thought when I first met him. I said, "There's no way somebody could be that nice." But as I've come to know him over the years, he's still that way to me.
I was honored to play also on a bunch of Barbara Mandrell hits, including I Was Country When Country Wasn't Cool. I was also on a lot of hits that the Oak Ridge Boys had.
That was Jimmy Capps playing on that Malta Gold album.
Oh, was it
Platinum.
really?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was
Jimmy
him.
played on Elvira, man.
Oh. We had Bobby Sue.
That discography is one of the greatest of the records he's played on. The contributions he's made to this music that we all love so much is powerful.
Jimmy is he's such a phenomenal player. He's so great.
In my opinion, he's one of the greatest musicians of all time, and he has one of the greatest hearts of all time too, which is, that's what I like about him the most.
Sheriff here don't like to remember these days, but when I first started getting my songs demoed in Nashville, when I first went to work for Acuff Rose,
right,
he was playing on the sessions.
Well, he's played on.
So he's got such a history, man. If you wanna find out the history of country music, you got to look at these session players too, because these guys were there and they were on the record.
I played on Kenny Rogers' Coward of the County and The Gambler.
Hey Jimmy, this is Kenny Rogers. I've done The Gambler with 500 different orchestras from time to time, and nobody can play that intro like you do.
I grew up listening to Kenny Rogers, and I grew up listening to Ronnie Milsap. It never dawned on me that those acoustic parts that I was trying to play on my, on my guitar were Jimmy Capps.
This man right here is on my very first record, my very first time in the studio with Nora Wilson played. He's a big part of why I ever got to make records.
I'm not sure why he wouldn't be a candidate for getting in the Hall of Fame for sure, because he's played on so many great records and hit records over and over. Just his discography is incredible.
You played on everything, though.
No. The Star Spangled Banner I missed. I was also blessed to work with some other stars who weren't known for country music. In 1983, I played on an album for Dean Martin. Ironically, that album turned out to be the very last one that Dean Martin ever did. I also played on albums for Ray Charles, Wayne Newton, Pat Boone, Julie Andrews, Andy Williams, and you can hear me on John Denver's big hit, Some Days Are Diamonds. I was on a great album that Tom Jones did in Nashville. The song Darling was on that album, but I cannot remember one thing about the session. I'm so sorry, Tom, but you probably don't remember me either.
I mean, on top of being an incredible musician, an incredible human being, his work ethic is unlike really any other person I know. other than, you know, Harold Bradley, Charlie McCoy, those type guys. They're a dying breed. They really are.
In 1974, I was asked to record my very own album. They wanted me to do an instrumental album that they could market to truck drivers. They put my name on the front of the album and my picture is on the back. And for the front cover, they used a photo of a girl in a bikini standing on a big truck. I'm pretty sure that they thought she would sell more albums to truckers than I would. I was so busy playing sessions through the 60s and 70s, and my schedule was packed. I really didn't need to keep playing on the Grand Ole Opry, but I did. The other studio musicians would ask, man, why do you keep going down there? And I'd always respond, well, it's really like a family. Why wouldn't I want to go there? As long as they'll let me, I'll be there.
I mean, he's been on the Grand Ole Opry for all those years, and just imagine all the people that he's backed up and played shows with.
What a great friend. One of my favorite people in the whole world, Jimmy Capps.
He's a total professional, of course, and a brilliant talent. He fills in with us sometimes. If I can't make it on the Opry, he puts on a hat and plays a big archtop guitar and does just great.
I've been a member of 54 years, and he's been here longer than I have. It's wonderful to work with Jimmy. You can relax because he's so conscientious and he's so good.
I've always looked at the players as equals to the artists. You know, when I was a kid, I wasn't a kid in the hairbrush singing in the mirror thinking I was going to be Elvis. I was a kid that had my head down thinking I might be Leon Rhodes or Jimmy Capps. Or
first time I came to the Grand Ole Opry, I was 12 years old. Of course, I'd been listening for years. And I had a particular interest in guitar players because I'd just gotten a guitar. And Jimmy was just one of my idols.
I came here in 1961, and Jimmy was already here because he was playing with the Louvin Brothers by that time.
Being married to a musician is not easy, but Ann never complained. In 2005, Ann had a brain aneurysm. I found her on the bathroom floor. I couldn't wake her up. They operated on her and was able to stop the bleeding, but there was too much damage. She never regained consciousness. Ann and I had been married 47 years. In 1997, Mike Johnson asked me to play guitar on a new show called Country's Family Reunion. As we filmed the first show, I thought it was magic, and it was. And I turned to one of the other musicians and said, man, I ought to be buying a ticket to this. But the most embarrassing moment of my entire career came during one of the early family reunions. And Gene Shepard never let me live it down.
Gene Shepard was singing a song that I wrote called Slipping Away. And in the middle of the song, there's a modulation where it changes keys. Well, all the band changed keys except Jimmy. He changed keys, but he didn't go to the same key everybody else went to. Oh, he was embarrassed. You could see, if you looked real close at the screen, you could see him turning red. He was so embarrassed.
It was hilarious. You could just see the girls, the ladies, Gene Shepard, Jeannie Seeley, they just cracked up.
Sugar sweet, some of the time, this puzzle's missing. We've got, it's missing the whole thing.
He wanted to do it again. It was, no, that takes away the fun of this thing.
When he really screwed up the guitar thing, and I remember jumping up and saying, oh, please tell me you were going to keep that.
Please keep that on tape. Please keep
that. Just there again shows the human side of Jimmy, and I think our fans like to see that. They know it's real.
Gene never let me live it down. Years later, anytime I would start to play for her, she'd say, Capps, you think you can play this right? She liked the kid people she loved, so I knew she must have loved me a lot. In 1995, I met a girl named Michelle. She was a singer, a very good singer, and we did a kind of a pop album.
The first time I met Jimmy, I came to Nashville to record, and the studio owner called Jimmy while I was sitting there in the office, and he said, we're going to do a session on a young lady, and he said, I'd like for you to be the band leader.
Michelle worked for the post office, and she had a route where she carried the mail, a walking route, and she sang as she walked. So she was known as a singing letter carrier.
A short time later, I moved to Nashville and started going to the Opry. He and Billy Linneman would clear me to come to the Opry. And I came often enough that the guys, when they needed a chart from the band room, I just would go run and get it for them. That's a bunch of charts for one person right there, isn't it? That's Jeannie's folder. I started doing that on a regular basis and kind of built a little job that the guys called me the Opry chart chick. One night when I was bringing all these charts off the stage, Keith Urban and Vince Gill were standing there, and Keith looked at Vince and he said, "Your tax returns, Vince?"
She was doing the charts for all the musicians at the Opry, so we worked together there. But Michelle and I were neighbors and walked our dogs together and spent a lot of time.
After a while, we found out that our friendship was growing into something more. And on July 15, 2007, we were married.
I think Michelle was really, really good for Dad, especially after Mom passed away. She was really, really supportive, and they just loved spending time with each other. And that's something that you don't see a lot of these days.
Michelle and Jimmy are such a team. Their love for each other is just, it's amazing.
Ricky and I did Bible study at our house for about three or 4 years in a row, and Jimmy and Michelle were part of that.
Everybody who meets her loves her. I love the most about her, she's the real deal, and she will tell you exactly like it is no matter who you are.
I treasure Michelle. She's an incredible person. I'm so glad they found each other, and what a great love story that is.
Yeah, at the beginning they wanted to know if Michelle was his daughter, which we all thought was hilarious, even Michelle. But they warmed up to the fact of how much they love each other and how close they are.
She so loves him and he so loves her that you just see it in them.
We joke about it because when we go to dinner, it's like, oh, Jimmy's got to sit by Michelle, Michelle's got to sit by Jimmy, and our husbands are all going down to the end to sit with the men, and all the women are up here, so we have to get the table straightened out and say, okay, Jimmy can be there because that'll be starting the men, and Michelle's going to be over here, and this will be the women.
After we get off from the Opry sometime, we go to Waffle House, you know. One of our favorite things to do. Now, Michelle and Nina don't like Waffle House that much, but Jimmy and I do, so they go just to be with us.
I received, they call it was it butt dialing someone, where you have your cell phone in your pocket and you accidentally dial the last person you spoke to. And I guess that had been me. And I probably should have hung up the phone, but I didn't, because I heard, "No, Jimmy, you don't need to be eating that." And I could just heard him groan. He's like, "Uh-huh." She's like, "No, I ain't kidding you. You need to watch your cholesterol and your blood pressure, and you don't need to be eating all that grease." Oh, and this went on for about 5 minutes. I mean, I listened to the whole thing, and I just cracked up.
You need someone, not just people out there, but you need someone that's close to you, your best friend, which is your wife, and I know it is with him and Michelle. That's his best friend, and that's her best friend, and it shows.
Well, the first time that Jimmy asked me when my birthday was, I told him May 25th, and he said, "So's mine." And I said, "You're lying." We were at a studio working, and he said, "No, seriously." So he pulls his wallet out, and we do have the same birthday.
While we share the same birthday, of course, we weren't born during the same year. I'm quite a bit older than Michelle, but neither one of us ever mentions it. I knew that I could overlook the fact that she was younger and much more beautiful than I was.
Being married to Jimmy has taught me what's important in life. He is so patient and he's so kind. It kind of embarrasses him that things will bring him to tears, but for me, it just showed me what a heart he has for people. I think that's what I really fell in love with was his heart, because he has a sweet one.
In 2009, Larry Black, the man who created Country's Family Reunion, told me he wanted to do a new show.
I talked to Terry Choate, who was helping me put the talent together, and I said, Terry, we've got to find a way to do that. I want music, but I can't afford the musicians. And that's when he said, if you get Jimmy Capps, everybody in town would be delighted just to sing with him.
Larry told me I could either be the sheriff or the mayor. I told Larry, I said, I think I look more like a sheriff. Plus, I like donuts. The first episode of Larry's Country Diner aired on August 3rd, 2009.
I went to a place that had uniforms for sheriff's department and the police department, which was really crazy because I wasn't sure they'd sell me a shirt or not. But they did, and then we got him a badge.
I was pulled over by the sheriff coming in this morning. He pulled me over.
He's one of the kindest men I've ever met.
I got to actually play with Jimmy Capps, man. That's something. You know what? I said, turn mine down, because if you hear a mistake, you know it's not going to be him. So don't turn me up as high as you turn. Thank you, brother.
It wouldn't be the cast without the sheriff. That's all there is to it. Hey, Jimmy.
Yes, sir.
All that stuff you're doing, that do it.
Do it again?
Yeah.
I don't think Jimmy has any idea how much he's admired and respected by people.
Yeah. That's the way I was doing.
Whoa. He's showing off. He's showing off.
He's just showing off.
It's
That's
the
all
cape.
he's doing.
It's the capo.
Yeah.
It's the cape.
We were on the Larry's Country Diner Country's Family Reunion cruise, and they're taking the formal pictures. I just hopped in and took a picture with Jimmy. And now every year that we do a cruise, we end up doing a couple pictures. I don't know why.
He's just so lovable. He's just the kindest, sweetest man in the world, and we love him to death.
Give us those right off the top of your head.
What's that?
The Miranda rights.
I have the right to remain silent.
No, not you. That's good.
Good answer.
That's good.
Probably the best thing I like about Jimmy, I love about Jimmy, is his laugh. It comes from here and it comes up, and he's doing this while he's laughing, and I love it. It makes my day when he does that.
It's funny how this business works. After playing on many, many hit records and traveling the road with some really big artists, working the Opry for 60 years, going on 61, it's amazing what one little TV show can do for you. More people hear your name and get used to seeing you in one show than probably would see you during your whole career if you didn't work TV. The power of television is really amazing. When I'm not on the Opry or the Diner, I enjoy producing. It gives me a chance to work with my son, Mark, who is a studio engineer.
And he said that he would love to produce it. And of course, we were thrilled with that. And then I told him we definitely wanted to play on it, you know. And then he's so humble. You want me to play on it?
Yeah, why would you want me to play?
I mean, that would be crazy not to have him on it.
Jimmy is an amazing producer. He spends a lot of time. You know, he's so technical. You can usually tell how a person is by the way they play. When you listen to the detail that he plays with, he's going to carry the same detail through every part of a production.
And he's worked with some of the greatest producers in the world, so I'm sure he absorbed a lot of what he learned from the Chet Atkins and the Owen Bradleys and the Billy Sherrills and the people that he worked with over the years.
On March 16, 2014, I was given an honor that was so huge. I had never even dreamed of getting it.
We are so proud to induct our friend, our brother Jimmy Capps to the Musicians Hall of Fame.
I'm the man in back.
Honored to be there that night and watch that, because I don't think there's anyone that deserves it more than Jimmy Capps. And I've said it to him too. I say, you don't even realize you're Jimmy Capps. You don't even get it, do you? You know.
2 weeks later, it was announced that I was chosen to be inducted into the North Carolina Music Hall of Fame.
With all the accolades that have been coming Jimmy's way, he takes it all so humbly, you know. He's never changed in all the years I've known him.
In 2019, I celebrated my 60th anniversary on the Opry.
To be in attendance that night and to be there when they brought out the sign that hangs above the band cage in the Opry House that says the Jimmy Capps Band Room. To be there for him that night was very special to me.
And over the last couple of years, in my free time, I wrote a little book. And I was totally overwhelmed by the response to my autobiography. I didn't think anyone would buy it, but they did. Thousands.
These great stories are treasures, man. I mean, Jimmy's goes back way long time ago, and if you're really into country music, man, his stories are great.
I thought it was a great title for his book because he has backed so many artists over all these years.
It was fun to read and know him. And it's fun to read something about someone you know.
He has been a part of so much of the history of country music, and you need to delve into that history by getting a hold of the man in back and reading it from cover to cover.
When you go through the book and you look at all the music that he played on my entire childhood, adolescence, the music that I cut my teeth on, he played on every single bit of it.
Oh, we loved it. We loved his story. I bought a bunch of them and gave them last Christmas, or the Christmas before. I mean, I gave them many away.
When he was, working on the book, the main thing with him is he never wanted to sound like he was bragging on himself.
I'm thankful that people buy my book, but I'm more thankful for all the comments I have gotten after they read it. I've cried at many of the letters and emails we've received.
I loved it. I sat down and read the thing and only slept when I could.
You think you know most of it, and you do, but just a few little nuggets, man, are really, really, really neat to discover.
I tell you, you get a Jimmy Capps signed book. Now, I'm speaking from the advantage of a 12-year-old boy trying to learn to play guitar. That would have been the ultimate for me. I mean, if I was Catholic, that's like a book signed by the Pope.
I also enjoyed reading what my friends and other artists had to say about me in the book. It was kind of like being able to hear what people would say about you at your funeral. But they said it while I was still here. I like this way much better.
And even in the book, there was 2 or 3 things that I learned that I had no idea of. It's like, how did I'm 50 years old now, and how did I go 50 years without knowing that?
I think Jimmy would probably be one of those people that wouldn't know how to slow down or quit even if he could. And I'm sure he could if he really wanted to stop, but I think it's just in his DNA, in his blood, and he's going to be there.
Of course, we're both in our 80s now, and the wonderful thing is that the good Lord's blessed us, we're still picking.
He's just a sweet, gentle person. I don't think there's ever been a time in my life when I had a crisis or like for instance when my son got killed in a car accident. First people there are Jimmy and Michelle, and but he's with you. He'll hug you and cry right along with you.
Just that he's the best, Capps is the man, and I love him, so.
It's obvious with Jimmy Capps, he's doing what he loves to do, what God meant for him to do.
I appreciate most that he had my back even before I was a member of the Opry, and it's important when you have people of of that class, of that nature, of that stature to endorse you and stand behind you.
Jimmy's one of my best friends, and if I need to know something or whatever, just want to talk, all I got to do is call him. And Jimmy's always got time for me, you know. I mean, just a fantastic person.
Well, he's the same easygoing, humble guy in the studio, on the Opry stage, or just visiting. It's just, he's just a delight.
He's a wonderful friend.
Yeah.
When my little baby was born in October, he was one of the first people to call me.
He's got such a big heart, such a kind heart, and he's funny, but he's also just an awesome musician, and he plays as good, 61 years almost later, as he did when he started.
He's a man that's worthy of respect and reverence.
It was an honor, to get to know him, and then to have him be a personal friend and play on the Opry with us. It's about as good as it gets.
Yes, it is.
Just a great Christian man. I love him.
I give him a lot of respect because I want to be just like him. Just he's so gentle, so kind, so respected. I don't know anybody that doesn't love him, So he's just a great man.
When I look back at my life, I use the word blessed a lot. I had thought about naming my book that, Blessed.
Well, ever since the first time I met Jimmy, there's something about the guy I just don't like him. I never have liked him. I still don't like him.
I've never heard anybody say anything bad about Jimmy. So let me be the first.
He's so egotistical. I mean, he gets all blowed up and thinks he's a star. And so I just never have really thought much of Jimmy.
And Harold Reed of the Statler Brothers. And Harold gave him a picture and signed it. And he said, this is to Jimmy Capps. He said, I'd hire you if he was the last guitar player on earth.
Oh man, Jimmy's the most stingiest guy I've ever been around in my life.
If me and Jimmy were hanging off a cliff, Taylor's gonna save Jimmy.
Yeah, by me.
And I'm gonna tell him to.
You gotta save country music.
That's exactly right.
When he buys, he usually does it in the real cheap places.
I was on a great hour. At least it's a laugh and not a cry.
Jimmy Capps is the best rhythm man in the business. He's fantastic. He's powerful. He don't know his own strength.
If it's a real expensive place, he'll go to the restroom or he'll walk outside or he'll, with that check sitting there all by itself,
And Michelle is going to kill us all.
She's going to kill me, but she knows that, at least she knows that I love her and Jimmy both so much, so she'll forgive me.
We expanded on that pretty good.